go and probably walk in and start or at least help out, but start with Miami right away. I mean, and even you can even if you wanted to, New England might take a look at him for $1 million or what's left on his salary. Why not? You know, there's a couple places he could fit in and start, but I mean, definitely Justin Fields makes sense in every shape and form. The guy is younger than Russ. He's showing his potential. The team loves him. He's playing well, and I think they're for real too. When you look at that defense, all we knew for the last 2 years is if they got some decent quarterback play, they'd be dangerous, and it shows. So that's one of the feel good stories of the NFL season. There's a few bad ones hanging around, and like I said, I texted you on Sunday. Um, I can't make sense of Cincinnati right now. I don't think Joe Burrow's playing that bad as much as their defense, and we know they have a great defensive coordinator, but their defense seems to not be able to come up with the stops they used to. What do you think about Cincinnati? I think you're frozen. You're back. Hello, Nate. I think you froze. Well, I'm going to start talking about while Nate's until Nate comes. Nate, are you
Here,
back?
I'm
Yeah,
back. Yeah, yeah, I
yeah.
was just kind of spinning. Yeah, I heard you though talking about the Bengals. You know, I'm not that surprised. I mean, all these people acting like they're so surprised that the Bengals are struggling. Let's look at the Bengals from last year. Wasn't exactly the same thing that we had seen, the previous year as far as making it as far in the playoffs and dominating teams like they had shown. And now this year, you take away Tyler Boyd, you take away Joe Mixon, you take away some of the key players on defense, and I'm talking about their safeties
Yeah.
that they had, who wasn't there last year, but you could tell the difference last year. And it's just not the same thing. And if you look at their running back room, where's the production coming from? Zach Moss.
No.
Zach Moss has been a backup at best in this league. And right now he's supposed to be, the bell cow for the Bengals. I'm not buying that. And then Chase Brown, to be honest, has been kind of disappointing since they drafted him out of Illinois, who we all thought, I thought would be a pretty good pro back, but he hasn't looked, hasn't really made a splash yet either. So, and the offensive line has not played as well and has had, battled some injuries. So I'm not really shocked to see that this team is not dominating. Do I think Joe Burrow sucks? No, I don't. And the people that are, saying that and rolling with that in their stupid shows and their little, clickbait stories, I think that's ridiculous. Joe Burrow, is proven to be one of the few quarterbacks that can go head to head with Patrick Mahomes. And when he's got a team around him who can help him out, the sky's the limit. But there's not a whole lot around him right now. And T. Higgins has been hurt. So, you take away Tyler Boyd, you take away T. Higgins out of the equation in some of these games. And what are you left with? Jamar Chase and a bunch of no names.
The thing I worry about with Cincinnati is they're notoriously cheap, and this they've got to win this week because you got Carolina. If they lose to Carolina, just call in the season. I mean, you can start at 0-4. Just the fact you're 0-4 makes it tough enough. But I mean, if they lose to Carolina and their old Red Rocketeer, quarterback, it's going to look bad for Zach Taylor, and it's going to get late for him early. Especially, he's a couple of years away from that Super Bowl run. So, this might be the time they start looking around for a new coach and who could, who I'll tell you, there's a few out there. One that comes to mind right away, Mike Vrabel. If you're going to go somewhere, Mike, you got your quarterback already. There you go. A lot of guys would love to go to that place, and it's just when you look at it, like Cleveland. You and I both talk about how great this division should be. And Pittsburgh's playing up to it. Baltimore showed again what they did to Dallas last week, although they got to do something about their fourth quarter defense or the way they approach it in the fourth quarter. because you can't let teams come back like the Raiders did a couple of weeks ago and like the Cowboys did and really be a championship team. But I don't worry about the Ravens that much. Lamar is there. Deshaun Watson. I mean, how long are they going to stick with this with the Deshaun Watson thing? With how ineffective he is. I mean, let's face facts. The Giants should have won by more against them on Sunday. I think. What do you think?
Yeah, and that was actually one of his better games, to be honest. He was 21 of 37, which isn't that great. But he threw for 2 touchdowns. So that was one of his better games, and they still got their asses kicked. He got sacked 8 times. Was some of that on the offensive line? Yes. But he just is not the same guy.
No,
and me and you said this from the beginning. I said, look, he sat out that whole year when he was bitching and moaning about not wanting to be on the Texans anymore. Then he sat out the entire next year when he was suspended for groping massage parlor workers. And, or not, he probably just wasn't tipping them properly is probably what happened. But whatever, I digress. The point is, he didn't play football for 2 years.
Right.
And you sit out of, the premier league in our world at a particular entity, and that we're talking about football here, you may not ever be the same. And I don't think he's ever going to be the same. And also, he's not in the same situation where he has DeAndre Hopkins and all these great receivers, although Cleveland's got a pretty good set. So I think it's more him than it is, Cleveland sucking. And I love it because, they wouldn't reward Baker Mayfield, a guy who'd gone out and risked his heart and soul for this team, and they sent him packing and then paid a guy who quit on his team. So this is what you get when you do that kind of shit.
And the other thing about it is, like, I watched him a couple of times now. You bring in Jameis Winston only when there's a quarterback sneak, and you don't make it that. Why don't you make it more obvious? I mean, I don't get that. And Deshaun used to be a pretty good runner. He can't do a sneak. I don't get it. They're a mess, whatever. The other team I wanted to talk about is Jacksonville. And I mean, Peterson seemed to have 2 years ago, he seemed to have Trevor Lawrence on his way to becoming a competent, if not great or good NFL quarterback. But definitely there's something missing with Trevor Lawrence. And one thing I looked at with their team, why didn't they go out and get a veteran backup for him? Why did you get Mac Jones? Another project? Why is Mac Jones backing up Trevor Lawrence? I don't get why you do that.
Well, honestly, Mac Jones is way better than what they had last year. So, I mean, to be honest, is he the greatest backup in the NFL? Definitely not. But is he an upgrade over C.J. Beathard? Yeah, he is.
I understand that, but I mean, with Mac Jones, okay, you got a struggling Trevor Lawrence. If you really believe Trevor Lawrence is your quarterback in the future, maybe they don't. Maybe they're not sold on him. Maybe they're around him more than I am.
They're sold. They already paid him.
Okay,
and they can't get rid of him now. He's stuck there no matter what.
So the thing is, then you have a guy that say Mac Jones, say Trevor stinking up the joint this week, and then Mac Jones comes in the second half and lights it up. And all of us now you got a quarterback controversy. And we all know how that can work against a team. You just had to look at, even though Zach Wilson deserved it, the Zach Wilson against Mike White things, those kind of things. When you have a team that's struggling, the last thing you want is a quarterback controversy. And I just think I would love to see. That's one thing with the Bryce Young thing with Andy Dalton coming in. And I know the rumors are coming out there saying, to Bryce. And look, I'm not defending. I don't think Carolina is a great place to be. But that's the kind of scenario you want with a young quarterback. When they're struggling, you got a veteran sitting on the bench who's not going to really be your starter in a year or two or whatever. So maybe you pull back the curtain on Bryce Young. You put him on the bench, let him sit there and gain some experience watching the game rather than being in the game, getting his ass kicked. And,
Yeah, but they're not going to – but what, Trevor Lawrence isn't in his second year, bro. Trevor Lawrence has been there for 4 seasons, and he's already on his second contract. They just paid him a 5-year, $275 million contract. They're not going to take him out. they're not going to sit him down. I mean, they're either going to play him, and they're either going to roll with him throughout, or they're going to end up, trading him and cutting their losses. But they're not going to, sit him down and play somebody else. I mean, they're going to play him until he's hurt or until it's so bad that they've realized they've made a tremendous mistake. And honestly, there's really nothing they can do at this point because they just signed the contract like months ago. So there's nothing, there's nowhere to go.
So is there a quarterback whisperer or something you could, I mean, because you hate to see this kid, I liked what he did at Clemson. I understand maybe he's not the unicorn everybody thought he was going to be. Sometimes, the NFL exposes you. You can't put, East Carolina on your schedule in the pros. You got to play real pros every week, and you got to be ready. But something he's got to start. I mean, like we talked about Joe Burrow. He's supposed to be in Joe Burrow, Mahomes' class. What do they have to do to get him moving in the right direction?
I don't know. I have no clue. I don't understand really why he's struggling, because he's shown, the ability to perform. He's shown that he's got the skill set to succeed.
Yeah.
In the NFL, and why, he's not. I don't know. That's a great question. There's a lot of issues going on right now in Jacksonville. But, I think he's part of the problem. I don't think it's just all around him and he's completely void of any blame. Part of it is him. And do I think that he sucks? No. Do I think that he's as good as maybe they thought he was, or they hoped? He got paid because of what they thought he was going to do. Okay. Right. They didn't pay him based on because of what he had done, because what has he done?
Right.
What has he done, Joe?
One good playoff run.
They won one playoff game.
Yeah.
That's what he's done. So it's not like they rewarded him for his, glorious career. They paid him because they thought he was going to be, a good quarterback moving forward. And they paid him based on, what they, thought he was going to be. So you right now, you've just got to keep rolling with him, and you've got to hope that he brings himself out of it. They thought that this was their guy, and they went with it. And so that's what they've got to do now. What can they do? I don't know. I mean, they've got to get better on offense. They've got to run plays that are more geared to what he's good at. And they've got to find something that works based on, their film study and what they're looking at. But right now it's just not going well. And I think there's a lot of factors to it, but I think you have to put some of this on the coaching staff, because, we all gave Trevor a pass because of year one and blamed everything on Urban Meyer. Well, you got to blame Doug now, because he's the coach and he's the head coach, and he already fired some of his staffers in previous years. So you can't just blame the coordinators here. You got to blame the head guy. And I got to imagine that if he doesn't get him right pretty quickly, he's going to be looking for a job.
Now, another guy in the division, he's a fresh new head coach, and I kind of support what he's doing with Will Levis. I like the fact that he's not giving the standard answers about, trying to hide what Will Levis his problems are and everything. I like the fact he's coming out and being truthful with the press and saying, hey, this guy's got to play better. This guy has to start correcting it. He's not holding back. I think too many times these coaches baby these new quarterbacks, and they don't feel that they're in danger of losing anything. I mean, Mason Rudolph isn't, he's started some games in the NFL. I don't think Callahan is going to wait too much longer without switching positions there. What do you think?
I think it was hilarious watching Malik. What's his name?
Oh God, yeah.
The quarterback from
Green Bay.
Yeah, from Green Bay, who, the Titans couldn't have gotten out of town fast enough, and he comes back with the Packers and walks in and kicks their ass.
Malik Willis.
Malik Willis, thank you. He came back in and just beat them down, and I loved every second of it. I thought it was hilarious. It shows you, a lot of it depends on the team around you. Malik Willis was a joke with the Titans and couldn't throw a 10-yard pass. And, this weekend against the Titans, he looked pretty good. And, I think to me, this goes and Callahan's in year one, so he's not getting fired. We can kind of we can give him a little leeway and give him some time. But Rand Carthon is the guy who needs to start seeing the blame. This is the guy who came in and wanted to get rid of Mike Vrabel and wanted to get rid of Ryan Tannehill and wanted to get rid of Derrick Henry, and he's made all these roster moves, right? And the Titans suck worse than they did before. So why is Rand Carthon not fired? If I did my job the way that Rand Carthon is doing his job, I'd be out on the street right now, not hanging out in this beautiful office because he sucks as a GM. And I'm just going to go out there and say it because no one else is.
Well, I mean, I'm going to pull up the quarterbacks, go quickly over them, like quarterbacks who Josh Allen is playing MVP level. We know Miami's in a mess. Jacoby Brissett, well, he's a placeholder. Drake May, I would say by the 8th or 9th game of the year, will probably be the starter there. Aaron Rodgers, loved it. I loved what he said today when he came out and told these, I loved it. I don't know if you heard his statement. Did you hear what he said today?
Aaron Rodgers?
Yeah.
No.
He came out and he basically said it was kind of a warning he threw out to his team, and it showed a lot of leadership. He says, there's another danger with feeling good. He goes, the press is on your side, your fans are cheering you. He goes, you can get self-satisfied, and that's as dangerous or even more dangerous than when you feel like everybody's picking on you. He goes, so I like the way he threw that out to his team, around here, everybody. And right now, the Jets are looking good. They should be 5-1 or 5-1, I would say, by game 6. And with the fact Miami's a mess, New England's a mess, they should be right in the playoff hunt. So I do think the Jets, and I hope for their fans, they do make a run at it this year. But I like the fact that the veteran quarterback is saying the right things too. I like that. He came out and gave those kids a warning saying, hey, just because everybody loves us now doesn't mean they won't hate us in 3 weeks if we start losing. So I thought that was cool. What did you think about the Anthony Richardson situation out with the Colts?
What do you mean?
I don't know. I've been hearing some. I haven't watched a lot of the Colts, so I haven't gotten a real good look at what he's doing out there. But I'm hearing some mixed reports. I want you to hear what you're thinking about what he's doing out there.
I don't understand why people are ready to pull the plug on him. I mean, he just won and beat the number 1 pick in the draft. And I'm talking about Caleb Williams this past week when the Colts played the Bears. And, he looks like a project, which is what we thought. He played, what did he start? 12 games at Florida over 2 seasons. He was 10 of 20, which is not great, for 167 yards and 2 picks. That's not good, but they were somehow still able to win the game. And I don't know. I'm not surprised that he's struggling. And any of these people that are shocked that he doesn't look like a Hall of Fame quarterback yet, I don't know what to tell you. He played in 12 college games, and he's got a long way to go. Has he shown me some flashes to where I think he could potentially be a decent starter someday? Yeah, he has. And I've actually been more impressed with him than I originally anticipated with him coming out. I just thought it was a horrible draft pick to take him that high. I didn't think it was a bad idea to draft him, but to draft him that high is kind of problematic because
he's going to be a project.
Yeah, you got to play him right away. And, you got to roll him out there. And then if he struggles, you don't really want to take him out. And that's where you kind of run into problems. So, I'm not surprised by anything that's happened so far. My question is, how long are they going to leave him out there? They really don't have anybody else to put in. So I think they're going to let him learn on the job. And I think that's what they should do.
All right. How about another young quarterback, Bo Nix? What have you liked? What did you see with him yet?
Yeah, I mean, my favorite thing with him so far was the way that he bounced back. Last week he had a really bad game and struggled mightily. To start 0-2, they began the season kind of rough. He looked like a rookie, at best, and then he came back and had a good game against the Bucks. The first week they didn't play that great, against the Seahawks. They lost 26-20. Week 2, he looked even worse against the Steelers. But then in week 3, he comes out and, really played pretty well. And took it to Baker Mayfield and the Buccaneers and won 26-7. So that's what you want to see. You want to see somebody get better. You want to see them, make mistakes in a couple of games, and then a couple of weeks later not make those mistakes and improve. And that's what I've seen from him so far. And some of these young guys are gonna look bad at times, but if they can put it together for a game and really have a good contest, then you can build on that.
All right, let's go to Washington, where Jaden Daniels has just looked great. I mean, he looks like they should give him another Heisman now. I mean, he's looked great. He's throwing the ball well. He's running the ball well. Dan Quinn, I mean, I'm not saying this year, but they look like they're heading in the right direction, and they may sneak into the playoffs this year. Who knows?
Yeah, and you said that in our preseason show, that was one of the things that you mentioned, that you expected Washington to take a step forward, and you thought that if the young quarterback played well, that they might have a chance to compete in this division. And I was kind of looking at you funny, but no, it's come together a lot quicker. This guy's coached before in this league. He
Right.
took the Atlanta Falcons to the Super Bowl and should have won it. So, I mean, this guy isn't like he doesn't know what he's doing. He's a veteran coach. He's been around this league for a long time, and the players respect him. And let's be honest, okay? We talked about this a lot last year. Which quarterback would you choose? Would you choose the kid that's big, that's got the big arm, that's put up buku numbers playing for LSU? He played for Arizona State and performed pretty well there. Then he went to LSU under Brian Kelly and just blew the boat out of the water with everything that he did and had all the intangibles, a likable kid? Or did you want the kid that's short, that doesn't have as good of an arm, that had a good season 2 years ago and then looked like shit last year? And I'm talking obviously about Caleb Williams. I said that I like Jalen Daniels better all along, and I thought he was a better pro prospect. So I'm not surprised that he's looked better than him.
I agree with you. And he seems to have his head on straight, which is a bigger thing too. Caleb Williams, I mean, we thought the Bears were going to be better this year, but I don't know if it's the coaching situation there. I'm not, like you just said, we're not big Caleb Williams believers, but I mean, that team just seems to have no clue, and this comes from a guy who's a Giant fan right now.
Yeah, well, I just think it's funny how some of these prognosticators, they blamed all of Chicago's problems. The last couple of years, they were all falling on Justin Fields' footsteps and all on his back. And then now that the Steelers are winning, they're like, oh, well, this is not sustainable. They're winning in spite of Justin Fields. I'm like, wait, whoa. You can't blame all the problems of the Bears on Justin Fields and then give Justin Fields no credit when the Steelers are winning. I mean, that's not how it works. Okay. You got to, if you're going to give somebody the blame, you also then have to give them the credit. And is Justin Fields the best quarterback in the league? Hell no. But he's a kid who has proven a lot, in college, and has shown certainly a lot of flashes in the NFL. And to be honest, he's looked really good so far, in my opinion. Those games where he didn't have high stat numbers, he completed 2 long bombs in each one of those games that got called back. Whereas if those had, counted, his numbers would have looked pretty good. So I'm confident with him moving forward.
Let's talk a little bit here about coaches that make differences, and it's obvious. O'Connell in Minnesota, what he's done with Sam Darnold, and you brought up before Malik Willis with LaFleur, after what LaFleur turned Jordan Love into last year. This McVay Shanahan tree is becoming one of the best, I guess you'd call it minor leagues for coaches. You look at DeMarco Ryans, you look at the guys that are making big differences when they leave Shanahan or McVay. That seems to be the place to look if you want a new coach.
Yeah, and that's why so many people have gone there. Really, the only one that hasn't stepped up and done a fantastic job yet is Robert Saleh for the Jets. And, they keep making excuses for him. And I'm at this point with me, it's put up or bust time for Robert Saleh. And he better make the playoffs. He better win some playoff games, or I'm ready to move on from him because I'm sick of hearing about all the excuses around his record at the Jets. His record has sucked, and I get it. The quarterback play hasn't been the greatest, but there's been other teams that have had bad quarterback play, and they, you mentioned, the gentleman out of Minnesota. They didn't have a quarterback at all last year, and they still found a way to win many games and almost make the playoffs last year, even with Kirk Cousins ripping his Achilles in half. So, Kevin O'Connell has been proven to be a great coach. And, the fact that he's won games with Sam Darnold is just absolutely amazing. And that's the guy that, nobody could win with him in New York, and then they couldn't win with him in Carolina. And, he's winning with them in Minnesota. And I don't think Sam's doing anything all that great, but they've got a great game plan, and they're calling plays that Sam can execute. Right. That's what you have to do as a coach, is figure out what your guy can do and then have him do that.
Exactly. That's the most important thing. I remember, the old story I always go back to is when Mike Holmgren took over as the offensive coordinator of the Niners after Bill Walsh retired. And the first thing he did, he looked at every bit of tape on Joe Montana. And he picked out specifically like 10 plays where most of his interceptions happened on. And he just crossed them all out of the playbook. He doesn't throw this play well. We're not going to call this play. We're not going to sit there and shove it down his throat. And there's a guy who was at that point was already a 2-time MVP. And it's like, so it wasn't, and it won 3 Super Bowls. So it's not like he was trying to do something like recreate Sam Darnold. He's recreating a future Hall of Famer.
Yeah, so, Mike Holmgren's probably one of the most underrated football coaches of all time. He's just, when you think about like the greatest coaches, no one ever mentions Mike Holmgren. But really, if you look at what he did out in San Francisco, what he did in Green Bay, what he did out in Seattle, it's just it's an excellent body of work. And I think he's to be commended for doing such.
Yeah, I think, the worst thing is I think he was overshadowed by Brett Favre. I think Brett Favre got a lot of the credit. But, I mean, look at how Brett Favre did when he left town. I mean, they're still a playoff team. But Brett Favre was, it's funny. I got into a debate with a friend of mine at trivia last night because we're both Giant fans, and it was over Eli in the Hall of Fame. And I was like, I could see him in the Hall of Fame. I mean, was he the greatest quarterback in the world? No. But he won 2 Super Bowls. His stats are top 10 in most categories. And he always brought the interceptions. I said, well, Brett Favre threw a lot of interceptions. Yeah. I mean, there are guys that do that. They try and squeeze the ball, but you don't want to take away their edge. So I don't know.
Did you hear what Cam Newton said?
No.
He was like, if Eli Manning gets in the Hall of Fame, he's like, I should be in the Hall of Fame twice because they suck. So it's pretty funny, but Cam Newton, he hasn't stopped running his mouth yet.
Yeah. And when Cam, you got run out of 2 towns. You made it to 1 Super Bowl. You had Cam. I tell you, we'll never know what Cam could have been because he had that way of playing football that he put his body out there and got his ass kicked too many times. But as far, I'm not gonna get in an argument over who was better. I just think Eli, if you look at his body of work, he's going to be in the Hall of Fame anyways, if you look at it. So stop. People should, whether it's first ballot, second ballot, whatever, he's going into the Hall of Fame.
Who's that?
Eli.
Yeah, I think he's going to get in. I mean, you win 2 Super Bowls and you win as many games as he did and throw as many touchdowns. I mean, he's got good stats and, was he the greatest quarterback of all time? No. Maybe not, but he supplanted a Hall of Famer in Kurt Warner, and then ended up winning 2 Super Bowls after doing that. So to me, that's Hall of Fame status.
And I mean, the whole thing, that's one thing, and then we'll get off it, is I love about being a Giant fan is Phil Simms and Eli Manning. We've never had the pretty quarterbacks. I like the blue collar quarterbacks. I like the fact that we didn't have the Brady's who made it look easy. I like the fact that they made me sweat for some Sundays. I'm okay with that. But let's talk about tonight's game specifically. We've got some time here. Giants and the Cowboys. First of all, the Giants are a field goal kicker decision away from being 2-1. Dable kind of brought back a little bit of faith last week, but then again, they almost gave it away in the end again. This Giant team, I don't want to get false hopes. I'd love to see them upset the Dallas Cowboys tonight just because Dallas has been kicking their ass for almost a decade now. And I'd like to get back on an even keel with those guys, at least be able to defend your home turf with them. They are your division rivals. You're going to face them every week. But this Giant team, I love what they're doing with Neighbors. Why don't they put Hyatt out there and just see what this young guy can do?
That's a great question because I watched him close when he played here, and that kid developed more than almost anyone I've ever seen over here at the University of Tennessee and became the Biletnikoff winner for a reason. He's got speed. He's got hands. He's route runner. He can jump. I mean, this kid can do it all. And I think all he needs is a shot. I mean, he's shown flashes. He's proven that he can do it. Why they're not playing him more and trying to get him the ball more, I don't understand. And it's very confusing to me because I agree with you. I think he could be that guy across from Neighbors that could make some plays and that could really put a spark plug beneath this offense and make him roll. They need another guy that can get behind the defense. And to me, they already have him. They're just not using him.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, these safeties, they double cover Neighbors. They're going to just start double covering Neighbors. And, I mean, if Hyatt's on the other side, that safety's they're going to have to play too deep against them all the time. And that should open up for the Giant tight ends who aren't very good. But if they're open, they should be able to catch a ball, and the rest of it. I don't know why they're not doing anything with that. But
I don't know. The week before when New York played Washington, they had 4 guys caught passes. Right. Malik Neighbors was targeted 18 times and had 10 catches. Darius Slayton, had 3 catches, was targeted 4. And Wan'Dale Robinson had 2 catches for 18 yards. And then Devin Singletary had 1 catch for 0 yards. So basically you had 3 receivers that had passes thrown to them. That doesn't make any sense.
And no tight ends.
And no tight ends at all. And nobody else even got a ball thrown their way. And when you have the Biletnikoff winner on your sideline, he's not hurt. No. So why are you not playing him? I don't understand it. And hopefully we'll get to see him out there a little bit tonight because I think he's a guy that could cause problems for the Dallas secondary.
Because you're going to need to, because you're going to have Diggs on Neighbors as much as possible. And they showed in a stat today, I saw it, I forget who had it on, that Daniel Jones, most of the time, Neighbors is on the left-hand side of the field when they throw him the ball. It's almost 70 or 80% of the balls he's caught, or maybe even more. He starts on the left-hand side of the field. So how predictable do you want to be? He's on the left. It's coming to Neighbors. Get it? I mean, I don't know. If we see it, Dallas is seeing it. Zimmer's seeing it. So I'm just hoping to see something better. What do you think about Daniel Jones? I understand. I don't think he's the answer. I don't think he'll be the answer. I think they're going to have to look for a new quarterback. But he's not playing that bad this year. Is he salvageable? Is it something where maybe he could do it? Sam Darnold go somewhere else and reinvent himself. What do you think about him?
Yeah, I mean, if you look back, we were just talking about the Washington game. His numbers weren't horrible. 16 of 28, 180 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. Then he had 5 carries for 32 yards. I mean, to me, he looks like a guy hasn't played a ton in the last, end of last year, started this year. He had the injuries. But to me, he's a guy that when he's been healthy, he's looked okay. And I think he's, in the top 10 quarterbacks in the league? Definitely not. But I see something there. And I think that, will he get enough time to figure it all out in New York? Maybe not, especially if the record's not where, they want it to be. And with that contract he's got, he's definitely movable. They can get away from him if they decide they want to go in another direction. But, what are you going to do? You're going to draft somebody else? Good luck with that. We everybody thought Caleb Williams was going to be so great, not me, but a lot of people did, and he's looked pretty bad. And, now you got Tennessee down there with Will Levis. He looks awful. There's just no guarantee that if you go back into the draft that you're going to hit pay dirt. It's just, I would rather keep the guy that's shown me that he has some of what it takes and that he knows how to play in New York and has some familiarity with these other players and these other wide receivers that they've drafted.
And the other thing is, you already know what he can't do. You don't have to learn it. You know the things he can and can't do. So design the offense around him. Let's go to the other side of the field where it's starting to become obvious that if he ever had it, Jerry Jones has lost his fastball. I don't know. This team, they're still not in bad shape. They're 1-2, but after the Giants, they run into a couple of buzzsaws. And from what I've seen from this team, let's take it a little bit at a time. They can yell all they want about Dak, but it was obvious Derrick Henry wanted to play there, and they didn't want him. Jerry Jones refused to sign him for $8 million.
Yeah,
and it came back to bite him.
Yeah. He ran for 160 yards last week, but let's be honest, he could still be running if that clock hadn't run out, and they wanted nothing to do with him. Yet the year before, when they decided to just roll with Tony Pollard and didn't bring Zeke back, it just looked horrible, and Tony looked like he didn't know what the hell he was doing, and they didn't have anybody that could come in and pass protect. Then they bring Zeke back another year removed from playing more football. And obviously Zeke isn't the same player that he once was, but I think he would have been more effective last year than he is this year. So and Jerry did admit this week on his own show that the losses thus far were on him, and that he had made some mistakes, and at least he owned up to it. But yeah, it's not looking good. And I've got a funny feeling that if they lose tonight, the shit's going to start rolling downhill. And, I think Coach McCarthy could be in trouble. The only person that's definitely safe is Dak, because they just gave him the farm, and CeeDee Lamb ain't going nowhere. But I got a feeling that it's probably going to fall on the coach's shoulders. Don't you?
Yeah, I definitely.
Jerry's not going to fire himself.
No. And the other thing is, it just not to just pile on him, but even now, the Trey Lance trade is looking so much worse. They want to build through the draft. They give up draft choices for a third-string quarterback that San Francisco traded up for and gave up on.
Yeah.
And he already had Cooper Rush, who had shown that he could step in if Dak got hurt and play pretty well.
Yeah.
So there was no need to get a Trey Lance. I don't get that trade alone. I don't know. What do you think about Micah Parsons as a leader and all the chirping he's doing? I love Micah Parsons, but I tell you, he's not playing at the level we saw him play 2 years ago. Go ahead.
Yeah, he's not. I think people are kind of figuring out, where he's when he had the most success, in my opinion, was when he was lining up at different spots.
Right.
And then it was hard to scheme against him because you weren't sure where he was going to be. Well, they've decided to just kind of use him as a pass rusher and line him up at defensive end. And there's ways to, scheme against that. You can, double him. You can chip on him. You can put a tight end over there. You can run right at him. There's a lot of different things you can do. Whereas if you're lining up all over the place, it's harder and harder to figure out where he is and ways to stop him. The one thing I think that's been overshadowing him is is Kendricks. Eric Kendricks has looked like the Pro Bowler that he was when he played for Minnesota. And, he looks to be the leader of this defense, not Micah Parsons. I mean, he's making the calls. He's doing the checks. He's getting everybody lined up, and he's making the plays. Whereas you would think that would be, number 10, number 11's job, because he's the one that's going to get the big bucks. But, yeah, I agree with you. It hasn't looked the same. It just the numbers aren't really there. I think he has, 1 sack on the season. I mean, come on, guys. You got Micah Parsons and you got 1 sack. That's a big problem, because this guy is he's a terrorizer of offensive linemen and quarterbacks. So they're obviously not doing something right with him.
Is it also the quality of their defensive line? The defensive line seems to be able to get run over, and I mean, the offensive linemen are getting to the linebackers, it seems. I from what I've seen. I don't know. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, they did not, replace talent for talent in this last offseason. They lost several players who went elsewhere in free agency. And, Mozzie Smith, their big draft pick out of Michigan, has not really performed up to the level that they'd hoped. And instead of bringing somebody in to kind of push him or replace him, they've just kind of left him out there. Which is kind of confusing to me. And, let's just be honest. I like DeMarcus Lawrence, but since he got paid, Joe, he has not been the same. I mean,
right.
He just, for whatever reason, maybe, there's no carrot being dangled in front of him, or maybe he's just gotten comfortable with all the cash he's got. I have no idea, but he doesn't look the same either. And they've had a lot of trouble stopping the run. And that's an issue for this team. And I think part of it is the defensive line. The offensive line, the defensive line is not the strength of this team anymore, and that's a problem.
So what do you think of the Giants' chances tonight of pulling an upset?
I feel good about it. I mean, Dallas is only favored by 5, and the prognosticators have them as the favorite in this game. But honestly, these two teams have the same record and are both having some problems. And I think this could be a game where if Brian Daboll calls the right plays and limits the explosives on defense, I think the Giants could win this game. I mean, they've shown they can beat the Cowboys at times, but have also struggled some against them. But I would not be shocked if the Giants pulled this game out and won by a field goal or more.
Okay, there's only 2 kind of big games coming up this weekend. New Orleans and Atlanta, or New Orleans and Atlanta. I don't know if they're there. And then Minnesota, Green Bay. These are big for those divisions. Those are big games early in the year. How do you feel about those teams coming into that?
Well, the Saints and Falcons, I have to admit, I did not have any belief in the Saints prior to this year. Right. I mean, just based on what we saw at the end of last year, based on what we've seen out of Dennis Allen, they came back down to earth a little bit last week. But this team has been scoring, at will. And, they put 44 up on Dallas. They put 47 up on Carolina. And then obviously last week was kind of the outlier where they only scored 12 points against Philadelphia. But, this game's going to tell us a lot, because if the Saints can score, 30 plus points on the Falcons and make them look pedestrian, well, I think the Saints, may be up, take that slot away from the Falcons as far as a front runner in this division. I know it's early. I understand that. But if the Saints can score like we saw them do the first 2 weeks, I might, become more of a believer. I'm still not believing in it yet. I saw 2 good games.
Right.
That's great. 2 good games don't mean shit in the NFL anymore.
And one was against Carolina, so you got to take that with a grain of salt.
Bingo. So delete that one out.
Yeah.
But they did put up 44 on Dallas and only gave up 19 points, even in mop up time. So I give them credit for that one. But this is a huge game, in my opinion, this week, and I think whoever wins this game is going to be in prime position to compete for that division. The other game to me is going to come down to the health. Is Jordan Love ready to play? I mean, I'm not sure. Have you heard about it?
No, I wouldn't be in a hurry with the way Malik is playing right now. I might start Malik if Jordan's ready to play. If Malik is playing well, I might give an extra week. You can bring Jordan off the bench if you need to, but if there's no reason to, I would give an extra week to get that. Knees are tricky. I hate that.
Yeah, and they said that Jordan Love was limited today at practice. It says that they're gonna give him up till game time, whether they're gonna make a decision or not. But yeah. I'm with you. I don't see the reason to force him out there if he's not ready, and especially when you've had Malik Willis playing well. Remember when they made that trade and we were just sitting there going, "Why are they
joke?"
Yeah, I thought it was a joke. I was like, "Why are they bringing Malik Willis up there when he's looked, he looked so bad for the Titans, and then they put him in this offense and they call plays that fit his skill set. And what have we seen? 324 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks, and 2 victories in a row. I mean, good for him. I'm proud of him.
Yeah, well, Flores knows how to coach. All right, a little college before we wrap up. We've seen the worst of what the NIL can do with Matthew Sluka out in Nevada, Las Vegas. I hope it's not the start of a bunch of these things happening, but I'm afraid it might be. I happen to have watched that Matthew Sluka because I watch a lot of the Ivy League, and Holy Cross had played. He started for Holy Cross the last 2 years against Yale and beat Yale, and he was a good quality quarterback at that level. Now he's gotten Nevada, Las Vegas out to a 3-0 start. I don't know who they've played. I didn't look at their schedule, and I'd be lying if I said I watched any of their games.
They won 2 good games. They beat Kansas and they beat Houston. Both teams are pretty good. Okay. And so that's why people were starting to look at this team, and that's why they were starting to get a lot of press. They were like, hey, mate, this might be the best, group of 5 team, because one of these group of 5 teams is going to get into the 12-team playoff. Right. And so people were starting to talk about UNLV. People were starting to watch them. They were starting to talk about this kid, and then all of a sudden, bam, here you go. He's not the quarterback anymore. So, it's interesting because I'm hearing 2 different stories. I'm hearing from him that they promised him $100,000 and that none of that has been paid, and that that's why he quit, because they promised him all this money and he never got it. And then I'm hearing from the university that everything that was promised to him has been given to him, and that he has asked for additional compensation since they started the season 3-0. I don't know who's telling the truth. I don't know who's lying. I don't really care. My point is, why would you quit? Because how does that help you? How does sitting out help you get money? Who the F is going to pay this kid to not play? Right. Nobody. And is this somebody that you would want? Somebody that wins 3 games in a row and then quits on his teammates, on his coaches, on his team, on his conference, on the whole deal, on his family, and he decides that he wants he's going to save himself to get more money? Would you want to give his kid money and bring him into your team?
No. And the other thing is, look, he played well at Holy Cross. He played well at Holy Cross. Okay, this is important for him to prove that he can play at this level, not Holy Cross's level. The other thing about it, when I heard this one word, I said, this is when I screamed at high heavens a couple of years ago when they started talking about paying players. Agent. Once the agents get involved, F the world, because they want their cut of the money. That's all they're there for. Matthew Sluka, he does not even this. You're probably one of 15 clients he's got, and he's trying to make money off of you. And he probably wants to stay at this level because it's easier than dealing with the pros. He can get, how many quarterbacks can he get on his, that he gets, 30 chances in the pros if he gets them? You know what I mean? It's like agent. This is what I feared was going to happen. This is what I knew was going to happen. And now we're going to see a lot of these guys get screwed up.
Yeah. Well, let's go back to week 1 against Houston, where UNLV played Houston, And, UNLV won the game, and Matthews Sluka was the quarterback. He was 6 of 13 for 71 yards with 2 touchdowns and 1 interception.
Right.
So, okay. And then he had 11 carries for 62 yards.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a decent game, but that's 133 yards of total offense. And you won $1 million. I mean, I don't understand that. He had a big game, obviously, against Utah Tech. I'm going to go ahead and delete that one because I don't even know what Utah Tech is or what, if that is even really a football team. Then he played against Kansas this past week, which Kansas is a good football team. They did not play a good game, but they are a good football team. He was 7 of 18 for 86 yards and 1 touchdown. Now, he ran for 143 yards and had a good day on the ground, but it's not like this guy's Brett Favre throwing the ball around.
That's basically his game. And I don't know his stats from Holy Cross. I just remember watching him against Yale, and Yale has a good Ivy League team, and he was able to shred the Yale defense with his feet more than his arm. But he could pass at that level because he's not facing the kind of defensive backs you're going to face in Division I. It's totally different game. So I mean, I look, the kid's screwing himself. If he did have it, just say one thing: CFL, because no pro team's going to touch him. Already, he's going to get a reputation. Right now, all the GMs are sitting there going, "Head case, don't need this kid. I don't need this kid. Forget it."
Well, I mean, and especially after 3 games, I mean, at least play 4 and then show me, how great you are and that your team's 4-0, but 3 games, that doesn't impress me, especially when one of them's Utah Tech. So I wouldn't bring this guy in to play on my team next year. I don't give a shit what he thinks he is. That would be it for me. And now their running back from UNLV is also opted out for the rest of the season and said that he isn't going to play anymore. And then there's now a defensive tackle out of USC who's also said this. But just so you know, this week, UNLV was set to play Fresno State. Then the week after, they are set to play Syracuse, then Utah State, then Oregon State, then Boise State. So why didn't you stay and show us what you can do against Fresno State, Syracuse, and Oregon State, as well as Utah State, and then then you can do whatever you want. But that was where I'd like to see how good he was against some of these Power 5 teams.
Right, exactly. And before we wrap it up, big game in the SEC this weekend, about as big as they get when you talk about rivalries. Alabama and Georgia. Give me your feelings going into this game about these teams.
Well, my feeling is, how healthy is Carson Beck? Because if Carson Beck is hurt and has issues, I'm going to roll with Bama. But if Carson Beck is healthy and is able to do what he can do, I feel like Georgia's the better football team. But if you look at it, Georgia struggled a little bit against Kentucky and was very lucky to win that game. 13-12. And Kentucky gave them all they wanted and dominated them really all day long. Georgia was able to get that touchdown late and secure the 1-point lead, but by no means have they looked like a machine just yet. So Alabama's looked pretty good. They struggled a little bit that game against South Florida. So we've seen each of these teams on film show us their weaknesses. So it comes down to who can exploit those weaknesses better. At this point, I got to roll with Kirby Smart and what I've seen from him over the last. I mean, he's won as many national championships as games he's lost in the last 4 years. So, I'm going to roll with him until I see otherwise. But it really, Carson Beck's health is something to pay attention to, because if he's not healthy, they're in big trouble.
All right, and before we go, Arch Manning, It was not a good as good a game as you would hope for in his first start. Two interceptions, but he did lead his team to victory. But of course, that's a great team he's got around him. So I mean, they should win that game. Would you start him this week, or if Quinn Ewers is ready, would you put him back in?
I would put Quinn Ewers back in if he's ready. If he's healthy, if he's ready to go, I would put him back in. Just because that's a proven commodity. Did Arch look really damn good when he came in and replaced him in that that cupcake game? Yeah, he did. He looked amazing. But I think he came back down to earth a little bit last week, and I think if I was the coach, I would go back to my senior quarterback who's played a lot of football. I mean, Quinn Ewers didn't just step on the scene and light it up. He had to earn his job. He had to, he was kind of given the job, but he had to earn his spot as the, one of the top quarterbacks in college football. And he did. He led them to the college football playoff last year and proved that he was one of the best players in the entire league. And I think, they owe it to him to put him back in there. And I think they will.
I'm going to play devil's advocate a little bit with this because I think they have enough talent to get through this week, even if Arch is still on a learning curve, and not meaning to be a Manning family apologist, but I think he learned some. It was good. It was good for him to have that kind of a crappy game, because the fact of the matter is, it looked like he was ready for the NFL the week before, and now we know he's not. So that's good. It's a learning experience. One thing I would say about Quinn Ewers, this is a Texas team that looks talented enough to make a run at the end. If Ewers isn't totally healthy and he pulls that muscle again, that's the only thing I'd be worried about. I totally agree. He's the right choice if he's healthy. If there's any question, don't, because you could lose him for the rest of the season.
And that's what I said. I said if he was healthy and ready to go, that I would play him. But Mississippi State is the worst, maybe the worst team in the league. They got throttled by Toledo 2 weeks ago. They gave up 48 points at home to the Toledo Rockets. They paid Toledo over $1 million to kick the crap out of them on their home field. So, it doesn't really matter who plays quarterback in this game. Texas is going to, roll them. But the things start getting real, harder next week.
Oklahoma.
They got Oklahoma at the Cotton Bowl, and then they play Georgia. Then they got Vandy, and then they play Florida, Arkansas, Kentucky, Texas A&M. So they've got a pretty good road to hoe, but I would want Ewers back in the fold by October 12th.
All right. I might go. I definitely want him back for Oklahoma. That's where I'd start him. All right. Yeah. What's on me in coverage this week?
Yeah, we're going to be talking a lot, obviously, about Georgia and Alabama. That's the marquee matchup, of course, this weekend. And we're going to recap that game in its entirety and talk about, who won, who lost, why, and, and then go from there. But that's obviously where most of our time is going to be spent this weekend is the Georgia-Alabama game. However, there is some other interesting games. Virginia Tech, Miami plays tomorrow night. We got Oklahoma State at Kansas State, number 20 versus number 23. And then we've got Louisville, Notre Dame. Should be an interesting game on 3:30 on Saturday. That's one that I'm really going to be looking at to see who can step up there. And then Illinois plays Penn State at Penn State. And that's another game that we're very interested in just based on, Illinois stepping up and beating Nebraska last week, see if they can take that momentum into Happy Valley.
All right. My friend, have a great night and a great weekend. I will see you next week. And everybody tune in to Man Coverage on Sunday. Let's go Giants tonight, Big Blue. Let's have a couple of flashbacks to the 80s, maybe beat these Cowboys for once.
I'm cheering for you, buddy.
All right. Talk to you later.
All right, see you, buddy.